Coming up on Talk is Cheap, we're looking into the Ubuntu movement. This is a society without the money. Up next on Talk is Cheap. Welcome to Talk is Cheap, where cheap is talk and talk is cheap. I am Dan Hohlfeld, and I'm joined by my good buddy Dale Westaby again.
Hey.
Last time we did those, how do you say that? Klerksdorp
Spheres of South Africa.
Oh, that was an awesome investigation.
Yeah, we actually went and did the dirty work and get out in the field and disproved the Klerksdorp Spheres as being man-made, and they're actually natural occurrences.
Couldn't believe it myself, but yeah, it was there. Proof was in the pudding, folks. And to my right, we got Pete Halbleib's back. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it sure has. It's been a long while. Glad to be back.
Awesome.
Can't wait.
So today, there's been a lot of our viewers said I should look into the Ubuntu movement. And I heard it, I kind of glanced at it, and I was like, well, I didn't know what it was, but hey, there's something there. And this topic was submitted by Green Barn Jams and John Tom. Now, this whole thing was started by Michael Tellinger, and basically Ubuntu is an African word for community-driven existence, and where everyone works for that community. So it's kind of like a socialism, if you will, but it's more like they want to do it without the money. And so Ubuntu, contributism, where people do not live divided in fear of each other, but rather live united and thrive in abundance in all levels of our society. And that's kind of what we want to do anyway. Everybody wants a
self-sustaining town.
Thrive. And on his website, I quote here, "Our division is also the main reason why so many of us live in perpetual fear. Fear of death, fear of our neighbors, fear of the unknown, fear of cancer or disease, fear of authority, fear of losing our jobs. We seem to fear everything in our lives that should be joyful." And I totally agree with that message. So the idea is that everyone does what they want to do in life and eventually get rid of the monetary system, because money, we talked about before, is basically a form of control.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's what keeps us enslaved.
Yep, if we can get rid of that. So small communities of people doing what they want to do, and his thing is, as long as you volunteer 3 hours per week. Note this, I'm going to come back to this later, but there's more to it than 3 hours per week. But you'll get what you need as long as you do that. So the community system, when you break this down, the community system is no money, no barter, no trade, and have no value attached to anything, which makes it more valuable than others. Like a doctor's not going to be more valuable than a farmer who grows the food. That's the whole idea. And everyone contributes their natural talents and acquires skills for the greater benefit of the community.
Now, would this be like a class thing? Am I going to be born a shoemaker?
No, I'm going to get into this later because there's a lot of questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's watch his Indiegogo video. I'm going to play a couple minutes of it, and then I'll skip ahead in a couple more minutes. We'll comment as we go through it.
Sure.
So, what is our plan? First, we find a small town of around 5,000 people who want to participate in their own makeover, their own salvation, their own rescue mission. Then we find consensus between the people, the mayor, and the council. We identify the special skills and talents of the people. We identify the industrial and environmental potential of the town. Then we develop a razor-sharp business plan for a variety of community projects to match these skills and individual potential. These projects are actually meticulously well-planned businesses, but there is one huge difference between these and other businesses. These belong to all the people of the town, together with the investors that made it possible. Everyone in our town who participates in the transformation will contribute 3 hours per week towards one of these new projects.
Again, I'm going to come back to that. Remember that, 3 hours per week.
That no other corporation can compete with. Then comes a really critical part of our plan. We analyze how much our town needs to consume of everything we produce. And then we produce at least 3 times as much as we need. We can do this with ease because our cooperative labor force. Everything we produce is distributed freely to everyone who participates, and the other 2/3 are sold on the open market to our neighboring towns and cities, or even exported if need be. But herein lies the twist. We sell whatever we produce cheaper than any other supplier. How is this possible? Because of our free labor force and the ingredients that we supply ourselves. And so, in a strange twist of fate, money will become the tool that destroys capitalism. It becomes clear that contributionism devours capitalism wherever it may be. This will lead to a substantial income stream from all our projects very quickly. From food to technology, healthcare to music, tourism to engineering, and so much more that would not be possible in a capitalist model. Why? Because it would simply not be financially viable. Set your imagination free and imagine how much wealth our little town will create from just 50 new projects. But what do we do with all this money? We keep it simple, as we always should. 1/3 goes to the investors or the farmers or the factory owners.
So now he's still talking about money. He eventually wants to get rid of that money, but the problem is the transition period that we have to go through to get to there. So that's where it's going to be a little hard. So let's see what he does about the division of it.
Good. 1/3 goes to the investors or the farmers or the factory owners that turn their businesses into a community project. 1/3 goes to upgrading and maintaining and constantly creating new projects based on the needs and skills of the people. And the last 1/3 is distributed equally to everyone who participates in the projects. This provides for an elegant and simple transition phase. No one has to leave their job because everyone has 3 hours a week. And very soon, the people of our town will be receiving more money from community projects than their jobs, while getting most of the things we need to live for free. As this abundance begins to grow, and our town becomes wealthy beyond comprehension, new projects will start up every week, giving expression to the creative talents of our people. One by one, the people who work for the mines and other dangerous industries will leave their jobs.
So what do you think so far?
It's got cultish overtones to me right now, and I think it's oversimplifying you'll have everything you need. Well, okay. What kind of community produces its own penicillin, right? Things like that.
You would have to export and import exponentially like any town, and that's going to take money.
You're getting to one of the big questions. So he actually launched this in September of 2012 in South Africa. So he's gradually transforming this society into that. So I got a website here, and he's actually looking for volunteers right now because it's still in the beginning phases. So join us for 1 to 3 months. Share your skills with the community. Be a teacher. And here's all the people they're looking for, like a chef, cook, food, all this good stuff. But here's the kicker. You have to pay $30 a day, but it covers accommodations, 3 meals a day, coffees and teas, and that's other basic
So it costs you money.
See, that's the problem with this right
end.
now, because it's just this transition phase until you can get everybody on board and switch it over.
Yeah, because there's no profit coming off of that.
Right, because it's got to get started. There's nothing going right now.
And I think I like the concept, and I think it could work, but you'd need a very well-rounded community to start with, because
good group of people.
I just think of some of these smaller communities, around here. You're going to have 2 industries, so you can dry grain and sell booze at the bar, or something like that. And what about the people that refuse to contribute?
3 hours a week. I use that doing Netflix alone.
Oh, yeah, right.
But am I going to stop watching Netflix for a mandatory, raking somebody's yard and building a building?
The thing is, if that's all you got to do.
If that's all you got to do is
If
3
that's your
hours a week?
job. No, I'm going to get into this. This wasn't set up. I apologize.
The way I see it is that his concept is just like a tribe out in the wild. They're all working together. There's no currency, and that works. But not when you have a need for everything else in a consumerism or economical situation.
Or what if you are in one of these, and I'm over here just, playing devil's advocate, but what if you're in one of these communities and one of your factories or whatever is not producing enough stuff to distribute evenly effectively? Let's say that we have a car factory, right? So then it would seem to me that eventually, I need a cars. I don't know. I guess I'm wondering if, like, when they say all the stuff you have will be provided to you free because everybody gets part of what's, a third of what this factory makes, and then 2/3 gets sold to the open market. If you're a car factory, let's say a small car factory, and you only can make 5 cars a month, and you've got 1,000 people in your community, it's going to be every 18 years or whatever that somebody gets a new car at that rate. So I think there may be some issues there where it would be difficult to distribute. Now, if you're talking about things like clothing and food processing and things like that, that's a little easier to split up. And I love the concept, though. I don't want to say that I think that's stupid in and of itself.
His YouTube channel here, this will be in the links below. Basically, of how it's going in Africa there, South Africa. He's got a community center going and stuff, and you want a community gym and all that stuff.
Yeah, and small scale like that. It's kind of like many hands make light work, right? So
I found his book about this whole thing, because he talks about the questions in here, and you're asking the good questions, so let's go ahead and look at the answers to those.
Yeah. After you contribute 3 hours per day, I'm sorry.
All right. So some of the most frequently asked questions here. So if everything's free, can I just sit on my ass and do nothing, and people, bring stuff to me, anything I want? Fuck.
What happened there?
All right. So like I said, contribute a few hours a day. So after you contribute 3 hours per day during which you perform your labor of love. So now we were talking about 3 hours per week for the community.
Right.
You're also doing 3 hours per day of what you love to do.
Oh, it's 3 hours per day, not 3 hours per week.
Now
it's 3 hours per day doing what you like, you love, and then 3 hours a week doing the community thing.
I see.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now the rest of the time, every
5
day,
days a week, so you still got the weekend.
I can work a side job and still make profit, potentially, or would that be outlawed?
The idea is, once you live in this community, you would be fed. So why would you want to work a side job? You wouldn't need to, because everything would be provided. And here's where you said, what if you don't do it? So if you do not contribute, he says they'll have a council of elders, and they'll basically have to ask you to leave. But my thing is, you'll still probably have to have somebody to escort them out if they're being a little... That's why you get, like you said, you have to have the right group of people to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to shovel the shit? That comes down to, there's people that would be able to like change like the sewage system, make it into energy and all that, to come up with new renewable ideas.
Yeah.
There's people that are passionate about doing that, so that's who's going to take care of that.
Let's hope we have a couple of them in our community.
It's supposed to be 5,000 people, so I mean, you're probably
is that like the ideal size to start one of these?
Yeah, that's kind of the ideal small size, and that's what he says. So if everything's free, I want 10 mansions and 50 Ferraris. Well, there's no ownership in the Ubuntu community, so material possessions do not exist if everything's available for everyone at all times. And keep in mind that transportation travel is free, and there will be new energy and amazing new devices. So that's the other thing too. We'd have to have this new technology that I always talk about. Once that's out, it's going to help a system like this work a lot better.
Material possessions do not exist because everything is available to everyone all the time.
So the idea is like, if you could go to the store and get food, you wouldn't need to, steal money to go do that.
But is it only rationed out, or can I go in and take all the lobster tails off the shelf? And
I mean, North Korea is doing
theoretically
this.
you could.
Yeah.
But I mean, would people? The whole idea is like I think if you had that good group of people together, who's gonna know? Okay, I'm not gonna overtake my share. I just need a few to feed me.
And the Council of Elders, which kind of still has that little cultish feel to it, to me, would step in probably at that time too, right? Because you should be entitled to your equal share.
Right. So money is not part of the system, and therefore he says the people wouldn't be corrupt, bribed off, paid off. And somebody asked, what about human nature? People are inherently lazy, because you kind of agree with that. But the whole idea is if you're doing what you like, you're not going to be, because capitalism, you're working a job you don't want to do.
Right.
And that's why you get lazy. You're like, oh, fuck this. But if you're doing something you love, you're going to go out and do it.
Yeah, it's like if you get home and garden or woodwork or something like that, and that's your leisure time, then it's not really work, right? Till they tell you got to do it 3 hours a day every day. Or I'm just kidding.
So this is kind of my question here, because immediately you think, okay, does this mean we're going back to the Dark Ages? It's kind of, I know this came up in your head because the way you were talking. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that if everybody's building on the technology, we would have the systems in place and it would keep getting built up.
What would inhibit somebody of not achieving their dreams? Like, what if I want to be a technologist, but there's no spots for that? Everybody wants to be making technology, not digging in the dirt. Like, what's the dictate a balance?
Like if everybody wants to do the same thing.
The Council of
balance.
Elders would say we need this many people or this person. And then maybe, if people want to rotate too, I suppose they could come up with something. Because I know I would want to rotate. I'd get sick of doing the same thing all the time.
Oh, you bet. Interesting.
Okay, so yeah, there'd be no land ownership. Because it basically belongs to the one communities. So who's going to make the rules? So extreme freedom maybe require measures to deal with those who abuse such freedoms. We're talking about this. It would be up to those people, like you said, with the Council of Elders in each community to determine how acts of violence, crime are dealt with. Again, you don't have to buy stuff. Everything's provided.
Interesting. I like it on a very high level, or at face value, it's like a cool concept. But I think what people aren't really acknowledging necessarily in this, but that's not to say with the profits you can't import stuff in your community and share it.
That's what he talks about here. If he's going to get one established, and then after he gets one established, it's going to start snowballing. So then pretty soon you got other communities, and then you would trade, if they're making whatever hammers over here, and you need.
And you'd preferably trade within your network instead of having to outsource.
Yep, because then you try to keep it local.
Yeah, because I just think that you would be giving up some creature comforts and some variety and, things like that.
Yeah, you'd have to give up consumerism.
Yeah.
Almost 100%.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
And be a minimalist.
I've been keeping my desk clear and stuff, and I just like the simplicity of it. You just feel like a load's off. Mm-hmm. I love minimalism. And here, no one will ever be a slave again because they're choosing to do what they want to do. This is what I like. So the education. Now, the children are going to learn differently than how they do in our society. So not having kids in the classroom, they're actually going to learn, every job, how to bake bread, how to hold a garden, all that stuff. And then after they get out of school, they'll choose what they want to pursue instead of, going to college and learning about some stupid algebra that's not going to...
There's so many things in this, in our society that we aren't even taught in school. Daily life, how to be a community and work together.
Basic skills you're not taught in school.
None.
And that's
you're hardly even taught the laws.
Yep. See, it's...
It's starting to make a little more sense now, ain't it? Because I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, that's not going to work. And then I started reading into it. It's like, well, it's possible if you get the right group of people.
It just seems pretty rosy. I mean, this statement here is pretty bold. That's out there you have highlighted in magenta. Oh, go back one. It says, by the time a child is 16 years old, then blah, 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 they would have done thousands of things hands-on, and they will know more than all the professors in the world today combined. In the upper right there. I mean, what?
Yeah, I agree with that, because all these professors, they only know their one little area.
Yeah, but they're not going to know the stuff that these professors know. How to make
They studied for 30 years and
Oh, like
specified.
polio vaccines.
Yeah.
Some stuff's useless, like all this
specified fields.
history shit.
Yeah.
You can take it
it's
either
a
way.
bold statement. I get what they're saying, but that's pretty bold.
Okay, yeah, stealing wouldn't exist, and the idea is you wouldn't steal because you wouldn't
Well,
disrupt.
it's yours, so why would you
would
just
just
steal
have.
it, right?
And
Yeah.
it-
Unless it's rationed, then you want to eat more or have more.
And like I said, this was important about it too. There's no
Yeah.
hierarchy, so everything is contributed. Like a doctor cannot say I'm more important than a farmer. That's real important, I think.
There's no mayor.
No, you'd have the council of elders, which would be the.
And how are
Okay.
they selected? Did they cover that at all?
Because that would be a hierarchy
He
in a
says
sense.
most likely, like probably
Election,
they'd be older, more wise. So this still brings up some questions that I thought about after reading these FAQs. So my remaining question is, okay, he said he wanted to get rid of trade, but in the beginning, the problem is you're still going to have to trade with those other communities.
Mm-hmm.
So it does kind of, you're going back on what your base is in the beginning to establish
but
that.
as you're initially you're going to have a skill set within the community that you can take advantage of and exploit, but not in a bad way, right? So now we create what we need for the community, sell 2/3, and remember, part of this too is, and I'm kind of coming around a little bit now because he says this money that we get from selling will come back to the community. 1/3 will be given to the people, then 2/3 on new projects. So if we're in this community and we have to either temporarily trade or we don't have gasoline, all right, well, now our new project is a oil refinery or whatever, things like that, right? So through new projects, I would think you would address your needs and replace those, and then over time you're going to have all of your major concerns and shortages addressed through these new projects. So I guess it makes sense. It's going to take time, right? And then that's
Yeah,
he's
that's the biggest part.
admittedly says that because of that transition period.
Yep.
I
And
think
that's that you're doing stuff that's against your kind of what you want to establish, and it kind of sucks. Here, the other thing you mentioned too, and this is what I kind of thought of immediately after reading this. Certain products would not be available. Like I couldn't get an Apple iPhone because you couldn't make that in your community.
I know, right?
So I mean,
But all these 16-year-old kids know more than all the professors in the world combined, right? So they should.
so yeah, theoretically, if they're studied in there, they could make their own smartphone. It probably wouldn't be an iPhone, but yeah, I suppose you could have a little.
I mean,
unit of
if you
that.
don't know it exists, then you don't really need it.
right.
Yeah.
So the other question is, like you said, what if people don't work their 3 hours? Well, elders can throw
Can
them out.
throw 'em out,
I mean,
yeah.
are they going to lock them up? What if they? He says not to feed them or whatever. What happens on sick days? You're asking all these questions.
What
Do they gotta
happens-
make
is
up-
that a question? What
Yeah.
happens on
That's,
No,
sick
that's
days?
my
it's,
question.
it's a good
Oh.
question. It's a good
Like
question.
if you're sick and you can't work your hours, I mean,
Do they
does
just
you,
start
do you got to make that up?
6
or how does
hours
that
the
work?
next day?
What if somebody plays
Yeah.
sick? I don't know. These are good questions.
or you actually get sick for a month.
What if
even.
you throw your back out and you can't get up, right?
Yeah.
So, and what about that sort of ongoing? All of a sudden, I get lung cancer, or leukemia, or something.
Do you have to work it back, or someone can fake it? Just like we have people getting Social Security so easy.
Yeah.
They'd be
yeah,
like,
just-
oh, my
yeah,
back hurts
yeah,
today. I
oh,
can't,
like,
yeah. I
can't
have-
work the field.
I have undiagnosable nerve pain all the time and stuff, and
So the other thing is, like, my thing is, without capitalism, and you can kind of take this either way, without capitalism, wouldn't you lose innovation? I think to a certain extent you would, because if they have a Windows operating system in the community, would there be any need to make Mac OS, which actually runs a lot smoother and cleaner and better, I think. But if there's something that's working, are they going to think about replacing it?
yeah,
That's my question.
because it would be a needs approach
Yeah.
to start out with, right? Where we need grain, we need food, we need shelter and building materials. But if you have a passion for creating new technology, that's what you do for your 3 hours of labors of love, and then all of a sudden you say, "Hey, check it out, Windows users! How to develop this Mac OS, and it's going to save us half the time. It benefits
But the
everyone."
question is, would you do that, or if Windows is running fine and it's doing stuff, would you even think about making a better operating system, or would you just work on apps for Windows? You know what I'm saying? It's
both Potentially, right? I mean, I think
Maybe
there's
it
an
would work.
inherent some people have this as an inherent goal to take something and make it better, make it more efficient, easier to work with. I mean, it's kind of like the mother of invention, right?
Without money, just it's easier.
Yep.
It's a better idea.
Yep. And I think that it wouldn't be nearly as focused on, say, you wouldn't have a development wing to specifically come out with these new crazy products. You would have individuals that would maybe work alone or together in small groups doing what they enjoyed to do.
Well, how cool would it be if you only had to work, well, let's say the 3 hours on your labor of love? I'd be like refreshed every day to that. Wow.
Yeah,
it'd feel good.
and could we do like 9 hours in one day and have the next 2 days
That was
off?
the other thing too.
That would
It's
be really
like,
nice.
well, I don't know about that.
You're more
Maybe-
productive in bigger cores as well.
Yeah. The other thing is, how is that tracked? I mean, is somebody watching you that and making sure you're doing 3 hours?
Yeah, you have punch card. Go into the-
That's kind of a slave system.
yeah.
Geolocation.
I've heard it in the past. I've touched upon this Ubuntu, and it just
Oh, you have?
yeah. I've come across it a couple times in the past, and I like what it's doing because it's given the big fuck you to capitalism
Yeah.
and the system that we're all kind of under.
Like you said with the other episode, Money Exposed, we got to get rid of that money.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And something like this would absolutely terrify major corporations if all of a sudden 5, 10, 15,000 population communities started doing this. And the whole point is selling their excess for cheaper than what it can be produced upon because of the free labor. I just, even just reading this, it just seems too good to be true. And so it just makes me even more skeptical.
Well, it takes one to start it and see what happens. Right?
there's-
It's an experiment.
Yeah, I totally see on a smaller scale too. Yeah. Local sportsman's club or something is a group of people that go out and they all contribute their time and keep the grounds up. And I mean, there's some fundraising and stuff that goes on, of course, with stuff like that. But community gardens is another example, right? Where it's like, here's some land, everybody chips in, and then they.
And the idea with the community would only be 3 hours a week, so that's hardly nothing. You know?
I would. Yeah, 3 hours a week would be nothing.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even
And then
feel
you
like
go
you
back
got
doing what
much
you
done.
love.
Yeah.
I would love to try this. Like I say, I think this could happen if you have the right group of people together.
I think he can make it happen if he doesn't charge people $30 a day. Like, if you want 5,000 people to make this project happen, say it's free to get into the community with approval, and we'll make our 5,000 happen, and then it'll grow from there.
Well, the problem is the transitions. How are you supposed to finance it? You said
You need to have investors willing to.
Investors that make profit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He talked about that in that video too.
Yeah.
about
Well,
investors.
yeah. And a third of the money profits go to, or a portion of it goes to the investors, right? What is it? A third of the people, 30 of the investors, and a third to new projects.
community projects,
Yeah,
yep.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean,
Because at the end of the day, these investors are doing it from a capitalistic point of view. They're not necessarily bought into the.
so would they buy into
system.
something that would be taken away eventually? I don't know. It's like, yeah, they really going to go on board for that.
Yeah. But their investors their factories would be the one that would be given to the community.
Yeah, but I mean, if this takes off,
Yeah.
they're losing money. So why would, at the end of the day,
If they're still driven by capitalism.
depending on how fast it takes off, maybe it would take 30 years for some
Yeah.
to happen worldwide. I don't know.
And you'd need to, if you're going to be part of this system, you need to basically swear off capitalism.
Yep.
And I don't.
And that's the problem. You're not really doing that at the beginning.
No, no, you're not, because you know what? I want a damn speedboat and a jet ski. When can my community give me
Right.
that? Right? The guy that asks the questions, he wants 50 Lamborghinis and whatever it was, 10.
See, that kind of wasn't a
race
satisfactory
cars.
answer to me when it says, well, basically you don't need that is what the response was.
Right, yeah, but maybe my labor of love is smashing Lamborghinis. So give me one, give me a bunch. I think that there's this expectation of reasonableness. You'd need to go in and understand that, especially starting out, you're not going to have all your creature comforts, but the potential would be huge. Can you imagine just being in a community where, yeah, you're out, you do gardening for 3 hours a day or fishing for 3 hours a day or something like that, and just be able to go down to the store and pick what you want off the.
Or just go down to the community center and grab a bite to eat and
Yeah,
not
whatever,
have to worry
yeah.
about money. And
Yeah.
it'd be something to try. I think if you labeled the ad right, there would be a lot of people willing to try it. Like I said, it's got to be that right group of people.
Yep. Plunk it somewhere out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
You'll get some folks out there that'll be willing to try that.
Well, I don't know about over there. They're kind of more all about themselves.
Well, sometimes there's lots of communes and stuff out there, though.
I think down south would be better. But that's another thing. He's looking for the right location
And
that's
ideal
started in the
climate
U.S.
as well.
Yep.
To be self-sustainable.
Yeah, that's the other
Like,
thing too. Winter.
Like if you have winters, it's gonna be hard to be
He's
self-sustaining.
starting in South Africa. It's not so bad.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a certain difference in South Africa, which appeared to be probably not maybe a third world country, but a second world country, versus America that has a bunch of brainwashed citizens that are focused on buying the latest, greatest.
Generation idiot.
Yeah. Latest, greatest, whatever, what have you.
All right, so thank you for joining me, folks. That is the Ubuntu Movement. I'm going to put the links in the description. I got a link to that PDF if you want to read his book. Very interesting, and it's something worth considering, and I want to see what would come of this in the future. So,
Hey, Dan, are you thinking that maybe we should start accepting applications for folks to join our Ubuntu group?
I didn't know we were starting one.
With the right people, we can, sure.
I'm thinking
like 5,000
Ubuntu biodomes.
Yep.
There you go.
We're starting our own group, open to the first of 4,997 people to apply. So
Read the fine print. See you later, folks.